The enemy scanners lit up with laughter. They thought the humans had sent a shuttle, fragile, harmless, an easy prize. To them, Earth was still a backwater world clinging to survival, a species barely worth the effort of conquest. But in the cold silence of space, something stirred. The dark silhouette that emerged was no shuttle. It was forged in the crucible of desperation, tempered by loss, and armed with a fury the galaxy had never known. A warship, born not just of steel and fire, but of every human vow never to kneel again. The crew stood ready, ordinary men and women facing an empire that spanned 1,000 stars. They knew the odds, they knew what was at stake, and as the first alien fleet closed in, the galaxy would learn the truth. Earth was never weak. It was waiting. The question was, could the stars survive humanity's awakening? Captain Elias Cade had always thought of himself as a man of routine. He rose before dawn, even when dawn was nothing more than the soft hum of artificial lights in the crew quarters. He walked the length of the Dauntless, Earth's newest and most secret warship, checking stations, exchanging quiet words with the night shift crew, and pausing at the viewport to watch the stars drift past. On the surface, it looked like any other ship, any other duty. But Cade knew better. The Dauntless was more than metal, more than engines and weapons. It was a promise, a declaration that humanity would not be underestimated again. Most of the galaxy still saw Earth as fragile, a species born late, stumbling into the stars, barely holding colonies against predators far older and stronger. The wars of survival had carved scars into every generation. Cities lost, fleets burned, names remembered only as whispers. Humanity had paid in blood for every step it took into the void. Cade carried those ghosts with him. His father had died on Europa Station when the Zier Dominion unleashed a strike that tore the outpost to atoms. His sister had vanished during the siege of Vega, her ship lost in the chaos, no wreckage ever found. Cade had learned young that space did not forgive weakness, and yet, despite it all, humanity endured. Where others bowed, Earth rebuilt. Where empires mocked, humans fought harder. The Dauntless was the embodiment of that defiance, Earth's most powerful warship, hidden in the dark while the galaxy believed it was still under construction. But to the crew, daily life was ordinary. Technicians argued over calibration numbers. Pilots traded jokes in the mess hall. The chief engineer complained endlessly about energy consumption. Cade found comfort in it, this normalcy, this heartbeat of humanity amid the silence of the stars. Ordinary men and women, far from home, holding the line. Still, he felt it coming, that prickle of unease that kept him standing longer at the viewport, the subtle edge in every incoming transmission, rumors of patrols spotted on the rim, fleets moving without explanation. The galaxy's predators were circling, testing, waiting for the right moment to strike. And humanity was ready to answer. Cade ran his hand along the cold rail of the command deck as the ship stirred awake. Crew rotated into their shifts, the quiet hum of systems powering to full. He could feel it in his bones. The storm was coming. The only question was when. He thought of Earth then, of the oceans he hadn't seen in years, the blue horizon that no viewport could ever replace, of his mother's garden, wildflowers twisting toward sunlight. These were the things he carried into the stars, not empire, not conquest, just the stubborn, unyielding desire to protect the fragile beauty that had birthed them. And maybe that was why the galaxy always misjudged humanity. They looked at Earth and saw weakness. They didn't understand that love, grief, and memory were weapons too, that every loss sharpened the blade. The first alert came quietly. A sensor ping, a faint signature on the edge of the system. The bridge crew leaned forward, voices tightening. Not a merchant convoy, not a stray signal. Something deliberate, something vast. Cade's jaw tightened. The alien fleet was here, And they weren't expecting a warship. For all their arrogance, for all their centuries of dominance, the enemy thought they would find only a fragile shuttle. Easy prey. A message to the rest of the galaxy that humanity was too small to matter. But the Dauntless was waiting, and Elias Cade, son of Europa Station, brother of the lost, carried an entire world's resolve with him. He straightened on the command deck as the crew looked to him, fear and determination warring in their eyes. Ordinary lives thrust into extraordinary danger. The storm had come, and humanity would answer with fire. The alien fleet emerged like a storm on the horizon. One by one, their warships slid into real space, vast silhouettes blotting out the stars. Hulls bristled with weapon arrays, their formation precise and unyielding. The bridge of the Dauntless fell silent as the sensor displays lit up with red. 30 enemy vessels against 1. The crew exchanged glances heavy with unspoken truths. They knew the math. They knew the odds. Yet none moved for the escape pods. None whispered retreat. Captain Elias Cade stood at the center of it all, his hands clasped behind his back, eyes fixed on the tactical display. To him, those red icons weren't ships. They were graves waiting to be dug. "Status?" he asked quietly. "Shields at full, weapons primed," Lieutenant Vega replied. Her voice was steady, but her hands shook as they danced across the console. "No sign they've detected what we are yet. They still think we're a shuttle." The thought burned in Cade's chest. That was the alien arrogance, that humanity would send only a transport, a fragile piece of kindling into the inferno. He almost smiled. Let them believe it. Let them open their claws for an easy kill. "Hold formation," Cade ordered. "Do not engage until I give the word." The Dauntless drifted in silence, her massive frame masked under a shroud of deceptive energy signatures. To any observer, she was still the shuttle the enemy expected, small, helpless, unworthy of attention. But beneath the surface, the warship's heart was beating louder and louder. Reactors thrummed. Rail cannons hummed, cycling through magnetic charge. The crew moved with disciplined efficiency, each station alive with preparation. The first alien transmission came through. Harsh tones, guttural syllables, translated into cold words on the screen. "Surrender. Your world has no place among the stars." Laughter rippled across their fleet, audible even in the static-laced carrier wave. To them, this was sport, a warning to the galaxy that humanity's defiance would end in ashes. Cade's voice cut through the bridge like steel. "Transmit nothing. Let them laugh." The alien fleet advanced, formation tightening. Their lead cruiser moved ahead, colossal in size, dwarfing what they believed to be a human shuttle. Cade leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "Target their flagship." Vega hesitated. "Sir, if we fire first—" "They expect surrender," Cade interrupted. "Instead, we'll give them fear." The order went through. Deep within the Dauntless, magnetic rails locked into position. A slug of tungsten the size of a truck hurtled down its chamber at a fraction below light speed. The bridge shook with the recoil. A heartbeat later, the enemy flagship erupted in silence. One moment, it was arrogance incarnate. The next, it was a blooming fireball, torn apart in an instant, fragments scattering across the void. The laughter ceased. The aliens had underestimated humanity before. They would not make the same mistake again. The enemy fleet surged forward, their formation dissolving into chaos. Beams of plasma lit the dark like lightning, arcing toward the Dauntless. Shields flared, rippling under the assault. "Brace!" Vega shouted. The bridge rattled as impacts thundered against the hull. Sparks flew, consoles flaring under the strain, but the ship held. Human engineering, born from centuries of desperation, screamed in defiance. "Return fire!" Cade roared. Rail cannons, missile silos, and pulse arrays came alive. The Dauntless unleashed fury into the storm. Slugs tore through enemy armor. Warheads ripped holes in formations. For every shot that struck the human ship, 3 alien vessels burned in reply. Still, the numbers pressed. 28 ships remained. "Damage reports! Minor hull breaches decks 9 through 11, the engineer barked, sweat glistening on his brow. "Shields holding at 60%. Cade nodded. He had expected worse, but the fight was only beginning. The aliens adapted. They began to circle, weaving a net of plasma fire. The Dauntless turned, thrusters roaring, cutting through the trap with precision. Cade's voice guided every maneuver, his words calm even as death howled around them. "Cut power to port engines. Shift auxiliary to aft shields. Bleed velocity on my mark." Now, the ship swung wide, banking hard as plasma bolts streaked past empty space where it had been moments before. The maneuver dragged 2 enemy frigates directly into firing range. "Fire!" Twin rail slugs ripped through their cores, igniting them in blinding bursts. The bridge erupted with cheers, but Cade raised his hand. "Focus! This isn't over." Hours seemed to pass in minutes. Every second was a choice. Fire or shield, retreat or advance, risk or restraint. The alien fleet pressed harder, their numbers still overwhelming. Then came the breaking point. "Shields down to 20%, Vega shouted. A plasma barrage hammered the starboard flank, shattering armor, tearing into systems. Alarms wailed. The Dauntless shuddered like a wounded beast. For the first time, silence fell on the bridge. The weight of inevitability pressed in. Cade looked at his crew. Men and women with families waiting on Earth, engineers with grease-stained hands, pilots who had never seen combat before today. Ordinary people holding the line of an entire world. He felt the ghosts of Europa Station in that silence, his sister's face among the lost. And in that silence, something hardened inside him. "Bring the main gun online," he ordered. The words struck like thunder. The crew stared, wide-eyed. The main gun, the Dauntless's secret weapon, untested, unproven. A weapon that drew on every ounce of the ship's core reactor. Fire at once, and they risked tearing themselves apart. "Sir, if we fire that," Vega began. Cade's eyes burned with steel. "Then we either end this, or we end with it. Prepare to fire." Deep within the ship, the weapon came alive. A barrel the length of a city block aligned with the void, humming with unbearable power. The reactor screamed as energy funneled into the chamber, light bleeding across the hull like fire. The alien fleet realized too late what was happening. Their formation wavered, ships breaking off, panic rippling through their lines. But there was nowhere to run. "Target their core cluster," Cade said, voice low. "Make them remember Earth." The crew's hands trembled as they locked coordinates. Every console glowed red, systems straining to hold the charge. The ship itself groaned under the weight of what was coming. "Sir," Vega whispered, "if this fails..." Cade closed his eyes for just a heartbeat, seeing Earth's oceans again, his mother's garden, his sister's smile. "Then we take them with us." The words echoed like prophecy. "Fire!" The void split apart. A beam of pure energy lanced through space, carving the dark open like a wound. It ripped across the enemy formation, cutting through shields, hulls, and reactors as though they were paper. Explosions bloomed one after another, a chain of fire that consumed ship after ship. The fleet that had come to mock humanity was undone in an instant, their arrogance burning with them. The Dauntless rocked violently, systems screaming, lights flickering. The bridge plunged into half-darkness as the main gun's energy drained the ship to its bones. For a moment, silence reigned, broken only by the crackle of burning circuits. Then the sensors cleared. Of 30 ships, only 5 remained, scattered, broken, fleeing into the void. The crew erupted, voices raw with disbelief and triumph. Against 30 warships, they had stood. Against an empire, they had endured. But Cade's gaze stayed fixed on the stars. The battle was not over. Not yet. Because those 5 ships were running. And somewhere beyond them, the Empire was watching. The bridge of the Dauntless flickered in half-light, consoles sparking, bulkheads groaning from the strain of the main gun. Smoke curled through the air, acrid and sharp. The crew were exhausted, bloodied, but alive. And then the long-range sensors screamed. Another fleet, larger, faster. Their reinforcements had arrived. 30 more ships, this time armed, ready, and furious. The exhilaration of victory drained from the crew in an instant, replaced by the cold weight of dread. They had just destroyed an armada, and yet the Empire had sent another, as if humanity's greatest triumph meant nothing at all. Lieutenant Vega's voice cracked. "Sir, we can't withstand that." Not again. Cade's gaze was steel. He didn't deny it. He didn't soothe them with lies. "No," he said quietly, "we can't. But maybe we don't have to." The words rippled through the bridge, confusing, desperate. Yet Cade's eyes were burning with something stronger than despair. Resolve. The alien fleet closed in, weapons arrays glowing across the black. Their formation was perfect, disciplined, methodical, the weight of centuries of dominance pressing forward. They expected the Dauntless to flee. They expected humanity to finally kneel. But Cade had lived with ghosts too long to kneel. He turned to the tactical officer. "Bring us forward." Straight into their line, the bridge erupted in protest. "Sir, that's suicide! We don't have the shields!" Cade raised his voice, sharp as a blade. "They expect fear. They expect retreat. Instead, we will give them something they cannot calculate." He leaned across the console, locking eyes with his crew. Hope. The Dauntless surged ahead, thrusters roaring, cutting a path directly into the heart of the oncoming fleet. Plasma fire lit the void, beams scorching across their hull. The ship trembled under the onslaught, armor shredding, alarms howling. Still, it pressed forward. The alien commander's voice boomed over open channels, dripping with disdain. "You are insects clinging to fire. Surrender, and I may spare your world." Cade smiled bitterly. "Transmit this," he told Vega. He stepped into the center of the bridge, shoulders squared, voice steady. "Earth kneels to no one. If you want our world, come and take it." The words echoed across the stars, carried into every alien ship, etched into every terrified comms officer listening. And with that, the Dauntless opened fire. Rail slugs roared. Missile salvos streaked like falling stars. The Dauntless tore into the first wave, 3 ships exploding in blinding bursts before they could even fire. But the retaliation was merciless. A plasma lance pierced the starboard flank. The ship shook violently, consoles exploding in showers of sparks. Crew were thrown to the deck, screams mingling with the roar of alarms. "Shields down!" someone cried. Cade pulled himself to his feet, blood streaking his forehead. His voice cut through the chaos. "Damage control, keep her alive!" "Helm, give me every ounce of thrust you've got." The Dauntless ducked and weaved, engines howling, twisting through the storm like a wounded predator refusing to die. Every move was a gamble, every maneuver one breath from annihilation. And still, the crew followed him, because humanity had always gambled with the impossible, and won. The enemy fleet pressed tighter, boxing them in. 25 ships still stood against 1. Cade knew what had to be done. "Prepare the main gun," he ordered. The crew froze. The system had nearly torn them apart last time. Firing it again so soon could collapse the reactor entirely. Vega's voice trembled. "Sir, the charge will burn us out. There'll be nothing left." Cade looked around the bridge, meeting the eyes of every soul still standing. "If we fall here, Earth falls with us. Better we burn bright enough that the galaxy remembers who lit the fire." No one argued after that. Deep within the ship, the weapon began to charge. Lights flickered, decks groaned. The very bones of the Dauntless seemed to cry out in agony. The alien fleet realized what was happening. Their formation broke as ships scrambled to scatter, but they were too late. "Target their command ship," Cade said, his voice like iron. "Cut off the head!" The reactor screamed, spilling light across every corridor. The hull glowed white-hot, metal bending under the strain. The crew held on, eyes fixed forward, every heartbeat a countdown to either glory or oblivion. "Sir!" Vega shouted. "She won't hold much longer!" Cade drew in one last breath, steady and calm. "Then let's make this count." Fire! The universe split open. The beam erupted from the bow, a lance of searing energy brighter than any sun. It tore through the void, cutting directly into the alien command ship. Shields collapsed instantly, hull crumpling like paper, and then silence, as the flagship was obliterated in a sphere of fire. The shockwave ripped across the battlefield, tearing through nearby ships, scattering the rest in chaos. The Dauntless shuddered, power failing, lights dying one by one. Systems crashed, decks buckled, and still the crew clung to hope, eyes fixed on the destruction they had unleashed. When the light faded, only wreckage drifted in the void. The alien fleet was broken. Those who survived fled into the darkness, their arrogance burned away in terror. The Dauntless hung motionless, battered and silent, but alive. On the bridge, smoke curled, silence heavy. The crew looked to Cade, weary, wounded, but unbroken. He straightened, blood dripping into his eye, and whispered the words that would echo across every surviving recorder, every witness, every trembling alien ear. "Tell the galaxy, Earth is not weak." And in the silence that followed, even the stars seemed to hold their breath. The battlefield was silent. Wreckage drifted through the void, glimmering like dying stars against the endless night. What had moments ago been a killing ground now felt almost sacred, an expanse of steel tombs and shattered empires. On the bridge of Aegis Eternal, Captain Lyora stood at the viewport, her reflection caught in the fractured starlight. The crew around her moved slowly, deliberately, as though afraid that one sudden motion might shatter the fragile stillness. They were alive. Against every calculation, every probability, every whispered certainty of the galaxy's powers, they had survived, and survival itself was a victory. But what they had achieved went beyond survival. One warship, one crew of humans standing at the edge of annihilation, had faced an empire that spanned 100 systems and held. Not because of superior weapons, not because of overwhelming numbers, but because they refused to yield. Lyora's gaze moved across her crew, eyes rimmed with exhaustion, faces pale beneath the harsh lights, yet in each of them burned a quiet fire, the fire that had carried humanity from the caves of Earth to the stars above. For centuries, the galaxy had measured power in fleets, in armies, in thrones of iron and gold. But here, in the smoking silence after battle, a different truth had been written. Power is measured in courage. The alien survivors knew it too. Somewhere out there, enemy warships fled into the dark, bearing tales of the impossible. The tale of humans who turned their weakness into a weapon, their desperation into defiance. By dawn, the story would ripple outward, carried like wildfire on every signal, every whisper, every fearful retelling. Humanity had been underestimated, dismissed, ignored. That era was over. Lyora drew in a slow breath. Her hands trembled, just slightly, and she let them. She wasn't a statue, wasn't a myth. She was human. And humanity's strength had always been its humanity, its flaws, its stubborn hope, its refusal to bow. "Status?" she asked softly. One by one, reports came in. Hull breaches sealed, engines battered but functional, shields shattered but repairable, lives lost, but fewer than expected. A miracle, if such a word could still mean anything after what they had endured. A murmur spread through the crew. It wasn't celebration, not yet. It was something deeper. Reverence, relief, and the dawning realization that they had been part of something larger than themselves. Outside, the stars burned on, ancient, indifferent. But for the first time in living memory, they no longer seemed cold. The war wasn't over. Leora knew that. The Empire would regroup, more battles would come, more sacrifices would be demanded. Humanity's road through the stars had only begun, and it would not be an easy one. But something fundamental had shifted. Where once the galaxy had seen only fragility, now they would see fire. Where once they had expected surrender, they would remember resistance. Where once they thought humans were merely another species in the dark, they would know, truly know, that humanity was something different. Not because they were invincible, not because they were perfect, but because they endured. Leora turned from the viewport, her voice steady now, carrying through the silence. This ship will sail again. Humanity will rise again, and the stars will remember tonight. No one cheered. They didn't need to. The words settled into them like gravity, like truth. And as the Aegis Eternal turned slowly from the graveyard of ships and drifted toward the light of a distant star, every soul aboard understood the weight of what had been done here. The galaxy would never be the same again. For the question now was no longer whether humanity could survive. The question, the one whispered in fear and awe across every world that would hear this story, was something far greater. If one ship, one crew, could change the course of history, what would happen when all of humanity rose together?